send a follow-up email after. This is also will be recorded and we will send it to you after as well. So first, whenever we talked about fees, there's just so many kinds of different fees out there. And whenever you think of fees automatically in your head, it doesn't, I think like it can get overwhelming yet kind of underwhelming where until you start listing it out, you don't really realize how many there are
Right.
in there. So, some of the ones that we talked about the other day were cleaning, pet, admin, early check-in, late checkout, property management fees, parking fees, amenity
Yep.
fees, like heating a pool, and other unique fees. So, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce Nick. We have Nick Borst with us, who's the president and CEO of Venture Found down in Destin, Florida, some very luxurious properties. What are the fees that you guys list currently?
Well, most of the fees that, as we talked about in our chat earlier, was just trying to recoup cost. So many of the fees in the last few years have come from the OTAs, from credit card processors. It was not that fee heavy several years ago, so we've had to change our model around. But going back to your question, we have an admin fee that covers the processing of the credit card. We have another admin fee that covers the OTA charge, and that could range from 5% to 20%, just depending on what OTA you're trying to connect through.
Mhm.
And then we also have a damage protection. We got away from the deposits a few years back. Became tedious when you have quite a few properties to be managing damage deposits, with all the check-in and checkouts. So that's the fee structure. There's additional fees that can be charged that are optional, like you mentioned, if you bring a pet, if you want to heat the pool, if you want to check in early or check out late. So there's a whole host, and like you said, you could have an itemized 10 different fee list if you're not careful, depending on what type of property you're staying at.
Do you have like a specific number of fees that you try to list on your OTAs, not to make it too much for people?
We actually bundle, so we bundle into what the admin fee is, and that does seem,
Bundle.
that
That's a
that
good
number
way of
can
saying it.
become, yeah, bundle, right. It does increase the admin fee, but there are several things in there, and we've experimented, and in talking with Kevin, not having the itemized, it looks like it's a bit egregious if you kind of list each of them. It looks a little nickel and dime to the guest. So we try to bundle it so that with the admin fee covers a couple costs, we just call it a straight admin fee. We share that with the guests if they ever ask what it is, so that we can break it out for them. And also too, if they book direct, they get an itemized list, because of course there wouldn't be an OTA fee if they're booking directly through our website. So some of those fees drop off again depending on how you book.
Mm-hmm. That's a good segue. And I actually said in the attendee chat earlier, we could totally pivot this in a multiple different ways, but that's kind of
Right.
one thing I specifically want to talk about before we even went into fees. The actual how to set the fees themselves is, OTAs, you have to list them differently. So how do you create a strategy to make sure that you are listing them the most effective way? And let's just talk about the first three, right? Vrbo, Airbnb, and your direct site.
Sure. So now more than ever, direct booking is, we've been pushing that for years, since the Expedia purchase of Vrbo and the HomeAway family. We didn't realize how much we had to push that initially, but when we realized how the fees began to grow to these OTAs, we push book direct as much as we can. Obviously, it's a bit of a challenge if you have an inquiry that comes through where they're wanting to book and they don't realize that they can go to your website, or call in the 800 number. But the point is that we focus strictly on those that we get a lot of our bookings through. So Vrbo in our market is our number one OTA. So we focus our advertising and our fees to be as aggressive as possible for those Vrbo. Then next would be Airbnb, and our website's always going to be the best guaranteed rate. We advertise at the best guaranteed rate. So if we can't get you to our website, then Vrbo is really focused, where we get as aggressive as we can on the fees.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And we have Kevin has joined us now too. Kevin Lincicome, who is the director of revenue management at Rented. I don't know why I had to pause for Rented. Sorry, guys. I had to think about that for a second. Kevin, we've gone through like the list of fees that we talk about. Determining how many fees that you should kind of not have, but like the fees that you break out on your listings. And now we're really talking about how you list them differently on OTAs. And from your experience, since you work with so many different property managers, do you see a larger variety of variants on different OTAs and direct websites? And what kind of advice do you give property managers when they ask you how they should be, making a strategy for basically advertising fees?
Yeah, you do actually see a lot of variation amongst managers. And I haven't actually thought about it much, whether or not that's a market driven thing, like if it's very common to have the same ones in per market, which I would guess if we were to really look at. But you know, I think overall the advice I usually give is people get hooked in on the low price when they're on the OTA, they're shopping. They say, oh, price per night is this. If your fees are not relational to that price, then I think you tend to lose a lot of people. And one of the things that you should look at is that number. Airbnb gives it. It's a great number to kind of track. Is how many people are looking at you and not booking. You're getting the clicks. So what is that actually conversion ratio, and how many are you
Lookers
losing?
to bookers.
Lookers to bookers, yeah. And my guess is that the higher the fees are, once somebody gets in there and they get to a checkout, the higher the fees are, the more they lose them at that point. So I always just say, look, you know, people expect cleaning fees. Don't try to bury it in your rate. You're not going to be seen. People expect even damage waiver nowadays, I think, and it's a good revenue stream to have a damage waiver. I think people expect these sort of things, but what they don't expect is $150 rent and $350 in fees. That doesn't really almost, you know, ever fly. So
it doesn't. And you know, I was watching a Verbo webinar recently, Verbo and Hostaway, I believe it was, and they, you know, had a stat that said that if your fees are at or below your nightly rate, they're seeing it's 50% more bookings.
yeah.
And whenever I actually shared that stat, Kevin told me that he had been actually advising a lot of people who asked him that exact thing. So, you know, it's making sure, and I'm kind of that person. You know, I've been in the industry for a while, but I'm a lazy traveler. So if I see a certain price and I get to the book page and there's a ton of more fees, I'm not even going to look at them to see if they're logical. I know a cleaning fee is, but if you have a ton of fees, I'm just going to automatically click off and be like, oh, well, that's not for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I've actually shopped. I shopped in Colorado, Breckenridge one time, and Turnkey. I guess I can actually name them since they're no longer here. But I think it was like a $49 rate, and I was like, holy crap, you know, they're giving this away. But they had like a $300 booking fee or management fee. So it's like, okay, clearly they don't want to split this with the owner.
Right.
I'm certainly not going to book it, but they ended up, they're more expensive anyway. So it's like their conversion rates had to be bad. They have to lose people on that. So,
that is an amazing segue right there, because, you know, a lot of local property managers, and we were talking, Nick, you and I were talking about this pretty deep the other day, was local property managers are like, man, I'm losing owners. Or I talked to somebody about this yesterday, maybe multiple times this week. You know, I'm losing people to the Turnkeys and the Vicasas of the world because they are able to give such a lower percentage rate. And so, you know, Nick, you know, I'm sure you've seen this a lot too in your area, like, or, you know, Kevin too, either one of you guys, you know, explain like what they're doing versus what you're doing and how it kind of splits, and you have that conversation with the owner.
Yeah, no, so Vacasa obviously bought Wyndham. Wyndham bought Resort Quest in our market. So we've been with Vacasa and the Wyndham model for a couple of years now. Their strategy is one where they can charge the owner less because they drive the price down, right? So what they do is they say, hey, owner, come to me because I'll get you X, Y, and Z number more bookings than this guy across the street. What they're not sharing with you, though, is that the way they're making that up is by in the fee side of the business, right? So they're charging the guests these exorbitant fees, and the math comes out to be pretty similar to the way we're charging, except we're giving more back to the owner. So the guest sees the bottom line being pretty close. The difference, however, is that a lot more is going into Vicasa's pocket than the owner. So, and that can speak to, you know, part of their model and their attrition is that, you know, we get owners that stay with us for years and years and years. That's not the model they're necessarily after. They're more top line driven versus bottom line driven. But that's how, and that's, in order to be competitive, we have to be able to speak intelligently to owners, because they don't necessarily understand that. You know, very few owners will go to a booking website and say, well, look at all these fees here. What are you charging? They only look at their statement at the end of the month and say, okay, well, how much money did I get? So it's helpful to be knowledgeable in your market, especially depending on, for instance, Vacasa is now the on-site HOA and CAM manager. So now they're passing along resort fees, parking fees. A number of our properties that are in condominiums or townhomes, we're getting charged fees because these guests are not booking through Vacasa. And they said, hey, Homer, sorry, guess what? Someone's going to have to get charged this. now we're having to deal with that, and we never had to before in our market.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a big thing, and that's kind of like showing, like, being able to set expectations with your owner when you're getting fees from the beginning, and in any of your acquisition, your pipeline, and really, Vacasa, I mean, I'm not saying Vacasa, the bigger managers who go more fee heavy or not, it may be for some people, but they really need to see at the end of the day is the reason why it's priced, why their percentage is priced is lower is because the nightly rate is lower. They're feeing heavy and they're not giving you commission off of your fees. So you need to be really, if there's any owners on the call, make sure you're asking these questions of how it's going. So I think that, that's a much bigger topic. Obviously, we can continue to talk about it, but it's like fees from manager to manager. It creates unique differences. One thing that we've said multiple times on here is the property damage protection versus deposits. Kevin, with talking to so many property managers on there, I think we've seen a lot more managers that are going to the property damage protection, even owners. What is your thought process on that? Why are we switching over to it, property damage protection, and how do you think it affects the traveler when they still see a deposit?
Yeah, just talking with lots, and actually I think Nick is probably a good one to talk to on this, because I think Nick, did you just recently start to implement that? You switched over, or had you been doing that?
Yeah, in 20 we switched from the deposits.
Yeah, so it was.
Oh, nice.
So I was aware of that. Right. So almost everybody that I've ever spoken to that does this will tell you that this is a net positive. You've given a lot of money to those insurance companies, and they pay out very little. And it'll be the same for you as well. You'll take in a lot of money, but you'll pay out, very little, or not nearly as much as you're taking in. So, it's whether or not it's percentage wise. Again, it's one of those things. If you've got a 1-bedroom condo, don't add a $99 damage waiver on it. But if you've got a 6-bedroom house, again, relative to the rental nightly rate, you can charge a fairly decent amount on that. The other thing that I just always kind of advise people, to make sure you're not calling it insurance. Obviously, that's not legal. And also maybe have some sort of a clause that you're specifying accidental damage, because if somebody throws this raging party and they punch holes in the walls, that's not an accident. And so it really shouldn't be covered. Might have a hard time recovering, but anyway, I'd love to know, because Nick actually went from using an insurance company to this, so his experience.
How's the experience with your owners? How has it affected your business? And are you using an outside company, or you're just supplying this on your own?
So in 19 to 20, we switched. We used one of the other providers, and they denied almost every claim we sent in. So in 20 to 21, and actually COVID was a good reason to evaluate that, because not only were the damage deposits, damage waivers denied, so too was a lot of the travel protection. So what we're seeing from a lot of our guests is saying, why would I buy the travel protection? Because they didn't cover me last year when I couldn't come anyway. But to your point about damage is, we're doing the damage waiver on our own, and again, we're having no issues with it and little pushback, because we've clearly explained what is the dollar amount it covers to, and like Kevin said, it's an accident, so it covers, depending on the home, anywhere from $500 in damage to $1,500 in damage, and it scales accordingly depending on the property. And the thing too with the damage deposit, or the refundable one, versus the other options, is some of these homes, what is $250 going to get you in damage anyway, right? So there's no reason to even have that transaction come on your books, come off your books. It's just too big of a nightmare to deal with. Furthermore, you had to escrow those in a different account, and it was just becoming, an accounting nightmare. So the damage waiver is definitely the way to go. And I think Kevin's point is valid, is you got to keep it into a reasonable number based on the type of property that you're in.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And that is a great point. I mean, especially like in those, luxurious homes, or any home really, like $250 is not really going to cover a lot going on these days in there. What fees, with that being said, we're talking about the take home and what it was worth, and, explaining it to your owners. What fees do you guys eat, or basically recoup, take on as a company, versus that you pass on to the owner?
Very few. I mean, we try to push as much as we can to the guest. I mean, our goal since day one, when we had one property, 10 years ago, was transparency is the key for these owners. We'd like to manage expectations early on. We like to make them understand what we're doing, how we're doing it, so that there's never any question down the road. Going back to the point about some of the larger companies in our market now imposing fees, we've put our heads together with each owner individually and said, how can we help to absorb these? Because like you said, it's not the guest's fault that they're not booking through Vacasa. We don't want to push them to Vacasa to book. So how can we make sure we keep them? How can we make them a repeat guest? Well, we ended up sharing the cost on some of these fees that were being passed along. So majority of our fees get passed to the guest. Those that cannot within reason, we end up either splitting with the owner, or depending on the type of property, we just eat it. You know, if you have a property that's grossing $150, of course you're going to eat a $50, check-in charge if you have to. So it comes down to business, and also too, it helps when you have an owner that understands you're running a business. In order to facilitate what needs to be done, from cleaning and maintenance, inspections, laundry, booking fees, right? Like, they have to understand that there's a cost associated with that, and as long as you make that clear to them that we're covering these costs in some way, that's how we're getting it done. I think the more reasonable the owner is, the easier it is to have that conversation.
Totally. And I feel like I say you have to set expectations in multiple facets of my life every day, whether or not it's with like my sister, my husband, or work. So I'm all about setting expectations. And I feel like setting them with your owners from the beginning, and also working with them, right, at the same time, to make sure that there's like they're involved and they're understanding why you're doing what you're doing. Because it's so easy to be like, you know what, I want to own a vacation rental and I want to make money off of it. But they just, I'm not saying it's not lack of understanding. It's just not knowing in the beginning what all goes involved in that.
Well, what's interesting too is these owners get angry at these large companies, right? So if we were concerned about them leaving, we're not now, because they feel blindsided by this. On March 1, you're going to get this fee starting April 1. No time to plan. And here's what's frustrating on the owner's behalf is, we have 80% of our year already booked out, and they put the fee in place March 1, which meant all of those reservations we couldn't charge a fee on. So now they're going to eat thousands and thousands of dollars in fees because they put this in place starting in March 1, but everyone booked before March 1. So this goes down several different roads, and I think what it realizes is that the owner appreciates those that are a bit more hands-on and doesn't arbitrarily pass along fees that end up going into the manager's pocket.
Right. Agreed. One topic that was brought up last week in our webinar on policies that I definitely wanted to talk a little bit about was, how do you set a pet fee, a pet policy? I did find it very interesting. Our CFO is actually traveling domestically right now with her husband and her 3 dogs. She's been in multiple locations and has not once seen a pet fee on any of the vacation rentals that she has booked. Kevin, why do you think that is?
Well, and she's probably only looked at places that don't charge it.
Right.
I'm the same way. I have 3 little Shih Tzus. I crate them when we're gone. We actually bring with us things to cover every surface that they might get on. So I personally bring yoga mats. I bring sheets and stuff like that. I will not pay a large per pet per night fee ever as a traveler. I also highly discourage managers from charging it, simply because I know I'm not alone in that. I have no problem if you have like a pet fee. It's a one-time, extra, it's more cleaning, right? I mean, you have to take a little bit more time cleaning, getting hair off. So I have no problem paying a pet fee, a nominal extra cleaning cost. But that's the part I take issue with. I do go back and forth on whether or not it should be split with owners, because I've been on the ops side. Obviously my background was running Texas for Vacasa. So, I had a lot of owners that wanted a piece of that because it was their property getting the damage. So, whether or not you split it with the owner has always been one of those things that I could argue on both sides of the fence. If it is a cleaning fee, extra cleaning fee, in my opinion, any pet friendly homes will always rent more and always rent for a little more money. So you can easily bury a pet fee into the rent and not offend anybody. People who bring and reviews are almost always better. We have a scenario here in Galveston where we have a whole community of condos, all built the same thing, all like, here's your furniture package 1, furniture package 2. So they're all generic. Perfect place to do A/B testing. And we had one that they hadn't upgraded anything. Their carpet was terrible. Their furniture was terrible. And it was the highest rented, highest grossing condo in Point West. terrible condition and best reviews because
They could bring
they
their pets.
allowed pets.
I mean, it's just
Yep.
that's kind of just
Yep.
where we are, that people want to bring their pets. But this is a good thing. What you're saying is, pet fee is a good fee that maybe you should hide into your fees. Like
Yeah.
make sure obviously your advertising says pet friendly, but figure out what a reasonable number is for you. Add it into your nightly rate there,
Right.
rather than adding a $50 a night fee.
Yeah.
Could be a way to go. Now, Nick, how do you guys do it?
Well, on the management side, we see things similar to Kevin, but maybe a bit different. So we speak with each owner to see if they want to make it pet friendly first. That's that's up to them.
Well, yeah,
If they
obviously
do,
that's the
if we do, we share it with them, and we found that there's a lot less pushback, and we've actually convinced owners to allow pets by sharing that fee in with them. Obviously, going to Kevin's point, you want to advertise to as many people as you can. So if you say, no, we're not pet friendly, that's a whole host of people that you'll never see, will never see your property. And again, they may see your property and not plan to book it this time, but may, bookmark it for next time and say, hey, next summer we're going to stay there, next fall we're going to stay at this property because we found it and it's pet friendly. So from an advertising standpoint, that's huge. Secondly, the cleaners sometimes, coming from the ops side, the cleaners sometimes do have extra costs associated with, means they charge us more. So there's going to be an offset there. But we found sharing with it, and our price is market driven. So we look at our competitors, see what they're charging. Ours is a one-time flat fee. It covers, as long as you don't have 15 dogs, it covers the number of pets that you'd have. And we also try to do size limits if it's possible, depending on the property. So each owner will dictate that, but we're reasonable with it. And again, like Kevin said, there's not a sow bird that exists that we've ever had that will come down here without bringing their pets. So again, it helps to keep the homes rented in off times as well.
Totally. And I think it's totally okay to have reasonable expectations. And if you don't want a dog in your house, there's allergens and reasons you don't want it, that's okay. But if you think about the upside and the extra revenue that could come in, and Cliff always likes to say that pets cost less than humans and usually do less damage, and that it can bring you generate extra revenue in general, it's something to think about. But I also agree, think about pet restrictions. I have a 90-pound Rottweiler. I'm definitely not going to bring her to a place that's completely white, black, with black hair everywhere without being prepared to do that. And I always want to make sure that I was being able to recoup, or pay for the cleaning costs that she's old too, so she doesn't really do anything. But nobody's going to bring their bad dogs. They bring their good dogs, is what you're saying. You're not saying my dog's going to tear everything up. Let me bring it to this vacation rental.
Yeah. Right. I mean, things do happen. That's why I create one no matter what. But it's maybe slightly off topic with the fees, but the potential. The owner conversation that I loved having, we had a guy who was ready to replace all his carpet, and he was not pet friendly, but he was talking about how he's going to need to raise his rates. He's going to put a new carpet in and all that. Actually, he was going to do away with carpet, put the engineered floor. And I talked him into, I said, you know what, before you do that, give me 1 year, make it pet friendly. You don't care about this carpet. You already know you have to replace it. It's already make it pet friendly. Give me 1 year and see what happens. It paid for his new floors. Put it that way.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
I love ideas like that can help people to make those kind of changes. So let's see. Sebastian Long has said some people definitely bring bad untrained dogs. That's unfortunate. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I hate that you have been the exception to the rule that I keep saying.
And some people bring bad untrained children too.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Yeah.
Bad untrained teenagers? No.
Yeah.
Well, we have about 6 minutes left, so I definitely wanted to also go on the topic of when you are a property manager who uses a property management software, how your software outlines your fees and how it pushes out. So, Nick, I remember you kind of saying, like, even though you have it set up in your software perfectly how you want to see it, you need to do some quality assurance to make sure that it looks correctly on different areas. So some issues that you've had with that, or, how you make sure that you're checking it.
Yeah, no. I mean, if you're not on a PMS, there's no way to book those with bundling or to bury them in the night cost. But Vrbo is our biggest OTA in our market, so using them as an example, there's very little communication if they were to change how they're displaying fees to the guest. For some time last year during COVID, they would take all the taxes and fees, including the room rent, and divide it out and say this is how much it's going to cost you per night. There was no sticker shock. when they got to checkout.
Mhm.
They've gone back to now advertising as a nightly rate. So again, there could be sticker shock if they see a rate that's lower than what they expect to see the fees against. But you have to look at how they're displaying to the guest. So it is worth going to the OTA side and looking what the guest sees, because even though you're pushing it through your PMS, VRBO and HomeAway and Airbnb, they dictate where it goes. So we would prefer it to be in an admin, as an example we talked about earlier. What ended up happening as an example recently is they actually detailed the item, and we had it in our system set up with one keyword, and they actually displayed the keyword, and it wasn't a keyword we typically would have used for the guest to see. So instead of bundling in admin, they ended up itemizing it, and it was just literally a software error that we caught. But again, it's worth going to the OTA, double checking how they're displaying it, because that's ultimately what dictates. And again, too, for those who are on PMS, you should have a Vrbo dedicated account manager. They're very knowledgeable. I do it quarterly with mine. Tyler Kirk is awesome. He will sit there and say, hey, look at the bookers, right? These are not transferring well. You might want to look at your fees. So it's really helpful to go to your rep in your market and have them help you look through your properties, because they have a whole host of data that you'll never see in the back end.
I did have one thing I was gonna add on. We do have one question, but I'll add. But that I was going to say before you said that is, earlier Kevin was talking about conversion. When you see that people go to look at your page, but they're not actually looking, those Vrbo account managers have a travel funnel that they can share with you. They can show you that this percentage of people are clicking on your page, on your description. They're getting to your cancellations and dropping off. They're getting to your fees and dropping off. So really utilize those people to be able to help you. I'm an ex-Vrbo account manager, so I really know that they are there to help you. So utilize them.
Yeah, that, and as well, a great point. And also too is they will help you to get to the premier host or whatever the name is going to be for 2021, right? They help to get you on track so that way you could get in the best position on ranking as possible. That's the name of the game, right? Is getting to the top third of the search results. Right. So they'll help to get you on that path. So that way, every single property, which right now all of our properties are our premier host with Vrbo. So that way, when guests are searching, there's another layer of quality that they feel that they're booking with a host like us, and they're comfortable doing that. Great.
Yeah, agreed. So Sarah Pope has asked a question, and I see that Kevin is typing, but I'm gonna go ahead and say the question.
I was typing that. Yeah.
So how do you recommend handling fees for violations such as bringing a pet without mentioning it, for a non-pet friendly home, or smoking when it's not allowed?
And I was responding to that, but it's good to share it with everyone. So basically what I was saying is when I was at Vacasa, one of the things that the rental agreement, when they agreed to rent the house, they authorize it up front to allow the charges to be, to allow you to charge them for damages. Now, obviously, if you have your damage waiver, that's going to read slightly different, or non-accidental damage. So what we would do is immediately charge somebody for the damage, like right as we're getting ready to call them. So that way they can't block their card or do things like that. I would also just say, choose your battles. If somebody brings a dog without mentioning it and they don't cause any damage, maybe let that one go. That's maybe just a personal opinion. I'd rather have a 5-star review from somebody than a 1-star, because you ticked them off. But so anyway, that was a short answer. I don't know if that fully answered it. Do you experience chargeback often? Yeah, that's the problem. I was just going to hit on that. Yeah, that's the problem with somebody who goes in and just trashes a place. Number one, usually was fraud that we found. By the time we go to charge that card, it was a card that was a kind of one of those temporary cards, prepaid Visa kind of a thing, or just a card that had already been canceled by the time they even checked in. So yeah, it's rarely good, but we were fairly successful in many occasions where we added that extra $200 or whatever because they smoked and said, sorry.
Also, yeah, we found putting things in writing would really help to win a chargeback. We have a very high success rate. So the vacation rental agreement, if you have what is in there, like Kevin said, here's what will happen if you do X, Y, and Z. That's really important, but also too, documentation and then communicating in writing. So Kevin said call, we call, but we also email right away with documentation and pictures. We win, 90% plus of our chargebacks when you handle it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Document. So
Yep.
we just hit 11:30. Like I said, we could talk about fees forever. So what I think I'm going to do is, with everyone who registered and attended on here, I'm going to send a quick survey out later on today, seeing if there are things we didn't cover that you would like to cover. Sarah, we would love to help you out more with any more questions. I actually just found you on LinkedIn just now and said connect. So if you want to connect more with me and Kevin and Nick, we're happy to talk with you to answer any of those questions for you. Next week, don't forget to, join us. We will be diving into taking your season from your peak season from good to great. I mean, Nick and Kevin could both say this, the Florida Panhandle or those beach areas have gone crazy after the pandemic. And are you leaving money on the table? Can we find more money for you? We'll be joined by Megan Mullen-Sneed from 360 Blue down in the Emerald Isle, and also Taylor Hill from Key Data, and our senior revenue manager, Valerie. So if you have any questions, I think you know how to find me. But I'll send you an email later. Thanks, guys, so much for joining me.
Thanks, Talia.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.